In Vedic spirituality, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, written about 6th century BC, there is this notion that your physical being consists of 5 koshas. The Sanskrit word kosha is sometimes translated as body, but it means pail, bucket, sheath, or simply container. According to the Taittiriya Upanishad, your body is made of 5 koshas, or 5 containers. Traditionally, the 5 koshas are named the Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnamaya, and Anandamaya kosha. The Annamaya kosha is the physical container or food sheath. This is the physical body of flesh, fluid, and bone. In the Upanishad, it is called the food sheath because it develops from the energy provided by food, and also because, when it is dead, it becomes food for other living beings. After the Annamaya kosha is the Pranamaya kosha. Pranamaya kosha is the body's prana container. In Vedic spirituality, prana means energy, so this container is filled with the vital life force energy. After the Pranamaya kosha comes the Manomaya kosha. The Manomaya kosha is the mind container. This kosha is made up of our basic thoughts and feelings. The Manomaya kosha also includes aspects of your bodily ego. We might call the Manomaya kosha your lower mind kosha. After your lower mind comes the Vijnamaya kosha. The Vijnamaya kosha is the container for your discriminating intellect. The Vijnamaya kosha includes your critical thought functions. Finally, there is the Anandamaya kosha, or bliss container. This is that aspect of your physical being where you purportedly experience connection and the pure bliss of higher consciousness. Now, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, the 5 sheaths are said to fit one inside another. Inside all of them, contained by all of them, is the Atman, higher self, or soul. Now, this Vedic view of the 5 koshas is interesting and rings true to a lot of people, and for good reason. Despite the age of the concepts, the koshas map quite closely to what a modern scientist might say about the physical unit. For example, the food kosha is obviously the physical body as a lump of inanimate flesh and bone. The energy kosha also maps. The energy kosha is the prana sheath, the breath of life sheath, or just the life sheath. The life sheath represents the electrical, chemical, neurological, and metabolic life functions of the physical unit. Interestingly, the life functions are literally contained by the physical body, just like the Upanishad says. Without the cells and neurons of the physical body, there is no neurological or biological life. Now, if the food kosha is the physical body and the life kosha is the body's life functions, the Manomaya kosha is the mind that emerges from the brain and central nervous system. The mind functions would include the body's autonomic functions, its reflexes, instincts, memories, and so on. It would also include those aspects of the brain and central nervous system which create the body's basic sense of ego, the bodily ego, as we call it. Neurologically, these functions emerge from the hindbrain and the midbrain. Once again, just as the metabolic functions are contained by the physical unit, the mind functions in the body are also contained by the previous kosha. Without the body, there is no metabolism, no life functions, and no brain. Similarly, without neurology, there can be no mind functions. Each layer fits in and is contained and enabled by the layer that comes before it, just like the Upanishad says. After the Manomaya kosha comes the Vijnamaya kosha, or the discriminating mind. At this point, you can probably anticipate that this kosha maps directly to the cerebral cortex. It is in the cerebral cortex that we find our discernment and information processing abilities, exactly as suggested by the ancient Upanishad. Of course, as with previous koshas, the neocortex is made possible by the lower brain, the CNS, the body's metabolism, and the body itself. Finally, there's the bliss kosha, or bliss sheath. Modern neuroscience and psychology has no awareness of what this might be, though given how accurate and well thought out the original koshas are, and how often the concept of bliss appears in Vedic, Islamic, Buddhist, and Christian spiritualities, it is reasonable to speculate that the body does have some kind of bliss response, and that this kosha might actually exist. What it might be at this point is anybody's guess, though I'm thinking the body's endocannabinoid system may have something to do with it. So there you have it, a modern mapping of ancient Vedic wisdom. Now, before closing up, a few final comments are in order. Number one, it is interesting to see how well these ancient Vedic concepts map to modern medical science. As long as you see beyond the pre-medical modeling, it is a one-to-one correspondence. That is amazing. Without the benefit of modern medicine, Vedic thinkers correctly identified and demarcated the physical, biological, neurological, mental, and spiritual systems of the physical unit in a way that would be familiar to a modern scientist. They erred only in extending the analogy with the body too far, in thinking that their observations meant that the physical unit consisted of 5 separate bodies and not 5 separate biological systems. If the Vedic thinkers who had put this together had access to modern neuroscience, they would have said the same thing, but conceived of it slightly differently. Number 2, despite the slight error, we can see the deep wisdom of understanding the biological systems in terms of layers or containers. Each container, each system contains the next, and as a consequence, each system, starting with the physical unit and ending with the bliss functions, must be healthy and properly aligned for the physical unit to work as a proper container for the Atman or soul. If you want your body to function as a proper container for your soul, you must keep all systems of the body, all the koshas, all the containers, healthy, aligned, and operational. Once all the bodily systems are active, healthy, and aligned, the bliss kosha is activated and the Atman inside is able to situate and shine forth brightly. Number 3, you can see that if you want to get anything out of the ancient teachings, you have to adopt the appropriate perspective towards them. Clearly, disrespecting and dismissing ancient teachings as primitive and untrue just because of their age or the difficulty we have in understanding them is not appropriate, at least in some cases. If this single example is any indication, despite the lack of modern science, ancient Vedic thinkers were thinking about things and coming up with sensible answers, and they should be respected for that. On the other hand, you can't just take ancient teachings verbatim without some effort to update and modernize the work. If you do, it won't make any sense to modern minds, and you'll actually sow disrespect for the teachings. I've seen many people try and explain the koshas, but without updating the concepts, their explanations sound trivial and even stupid. When they do this, they make the Upanishads or any other ancient teachings look bad. That's not useful, fair, or very scientific at all. So what is the appropriate perspective? The appropriate perspective is not blind adherence and not abrupt dismissal, but simple, respectful inquiry. You can't dismiss them outright because they might contain useful information, perhaps even spiritual wisdom, but neither can you approach them without using the functionality provided by your Vijnanamaya kosha, your critical neocortex. You cannot be afraid to engage with, update, and modernize the texts you approach. If you engage, update, and modernize, you generate understanding and respect. If you don't, you sow confusion and disrespect. Frankly, the last thing this world needs right now is more confusion and disrespect. Finally, just to restate an obvious point we've already mentioned, if you want to activate your bliss sheath, your bliss systems, your connection systems, Take the advice of the ancient Vedic thinkers and pay attention to the health and alignment of your physical body, your life functions, your mind and bodily ego, your higher thinking functions, and your spiritual systems. To all 5 koshas. The ancient lesson here is quite clear. Your body, your brain, your central nervous system, your bodily ego, and your critical thinking capacities all have to be healthy and aligned for everything to function properly. Only when your koshas are all healthy and aligned can your body properly contain your soul. As we can see, this is not rocket science. It is just ancient common sense.